Welcome back to codingcat.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Brought to you by Cloudinary, build faster with AI-powered image and video APIs. Welcome back, Purrfect peeps, to codingcat.dev. We have an exciting show today, all about NX and some new features coming out. I think we've titled this one NX Next Gen, so we'll see if that's...
Let's not call it that.
Okay, I might have to purge that title. We'll see how it goes. On the show with me today, I have Katerina. Katerina, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a little chilly in Michigan as we're recording this. It's like 10 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's cold. It's wintry. It's a fun mix that's happening right now. I'm still like recovering. I just got back from not just got, but I had to like take a little break off my vacation and come back, and I promptly like got COVID and got sick, and I'm finally like vertical, and it's exciting to like get moving again. I want to get to know a little bit more about you though. What is your background? I noticed some crazy degrees that you have out on LinkedIn. Can you tell me about a little bit about your university days?
Yeah, I can actually. So since I remember myself, I've always wanted to do programming of some sorts, right? I always wanted to be a developer. So I finished school and I get into computer engineering school, dream come true and everything. But I have a best friend. We've been best friends since we were 3 years old, and we always did the same things, like went to the same schools, went to the same everything. And she went to architecture school. So I was visiting her there, and I was seeing that they were doing all these artistic little drawings and sculptures and everything, like in the first year of architecture school. So I thought, maybe it will be fun to study architecture. So I left the computer engineering school and did a 5 years degree in architectural engineering,
Nice.
which was fun. It was 5 nice years of my life. I had a very good time in architecture school, but I knew it wasn't for me. So right after I finished the degree, I went back to programming. So I did actually first I did a master's degree on spatial data visualization, which was it was very nice because we did a lot of data analysis. We did regression and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it also had a spatial aspect, which I could connect to my previous studies so that I could take this degree, of course. And yeah. And then I went back to computer engineering school to take some lessons there. And yeah, I went right back on track.
That's pretty cool. So when
Yeah.
you do like spatial analysis and things like that, are you so I worked in the office furniture industry for years, and we always talked about like laying out floor plans and things like that. Is that the kind of like analytics that you were doing? Was that
No, it was,
okay?
yeah, it was more like large scale data.
Oh,
So for example, because I was in London, we had UCL gave us data, for example, for the commuters of the London Underground, for example.
okay, gotcha.
And we were to do like projections and visualizations of this data and yeah, this type of thing.
Wow, that's really cool.
It was very cool. It was very cool.
Any findings that you kind of worked on some data sets and you're like, whoa, didn't expect that?
I don't remember. So
You're like
maybe it
you're
wasn't
like me.
something
It's
that
like
memorable.
that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so throughout kind of university and things like that, you of course started working. And how did you get like into the computer field after that?
Yeah, so yeah, right after my master's degree, I came here to the computer engineering school and I took some postgraduate classes. And through these, I found a job at a research institute here in Athens at the Department of Informatics of that research institute. So there, I slowly got into like a full time job of programming, which was cool. Yeah, it was. I spent 2 years there on that research institute. We mainly did like research projects for the European Commission, and it was more like proof of concept type of thing. But it was very interesting because we were a group of people around my age, and we all like collaborated together. And yeah, we're still best friends. With we still hang out. Everyone has left this place, but we still hang out like we're old classmates.
That's really cool. And what kind of languages were you writing when you first started out?
So I started out like in university, and right after university, in university I used mainly R and Python for data analysis, but afterwards I really liked JavaScript and TypeScript.
Nice.
Eventually, TypeScript first, JavaScript. So yeah, and my first like full blown web application I wrote with Angular 1.3, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
The
I
first like
never
production
yeah.
application.
I never got into Angular version 1 or Angular JS as we know it now. My
Yeah.
first foray was Angular 2 into that kind of world. So I don't know why, but Angular JS never quite clicked for me. So I never went down that road, I guess. I think I still spent some time in Progress and jQuery and things like that. So after that kind of initial, you're getting into TypeScript and things. What was I mean, at some point you started to become more of like a senior level. Is that when you got into NX, or was there a few steps between there?
Yeah. So after I left the research institute, I had a couple of other jobs here in Greece, and eventually I started speaking at conferences. And the way I started speaking at conferences is because I was all the time online trying to educate myself on
Sure.
Angular, and I was seeing all these Angular conferences happening, and I thought, hey, I want to do that, And it also gave me an incentive to try out things on my own and build things on my own. So I started going to conferences, and when you go to conferences, you meet new people, you learn about new technologies, and you have the incentive to try new things. So you're sort of forced to sort of do more things on your own. And I think gradually through that, I learned more things. And through conferences, I also met Tracy Lee. And then she had an opening at her company, This Dot, and I interviewed there. And yeah, I was working with Tracy for a couple of years, and I think this was a great ramp up in my career because, of course, Tracy trusted me, and she had trusted me in a very good client of theirs, and they had a very large Angular application. So there, I really got into Angular and building more large scale applications and everything. So gradually after that, I yeah I think I learned more things, and then I applied to Narwhal back then, and yeah,
Nice.
got the job.
I just want to show real quick. So this dot is kind of where Tracy, I think Tracy and a couple others started this company.
Yeah,
Back probably 5, 6, probably longer than that now. It's been a while. But they do have some great portfolio sites, some services that they offer, but they also have conferences, right? That's kind of the mix that happens there.
yeah, exactly. They do a lot of podcasts, and yeah, they're very much into community stuff. And this was like right up my alley. I really like
Nice.
that aspect.
Yeah.
And Tracy is amazing. She's an amazing employer, and she's an amazing mentor. She's like she gives you an energy, to I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm very much inspired by her.
I met Tracy in Atlanta. Oh gosh, it's been probably 4 or 5 years ago now. So great person, really awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Probably the Norwal. So since we brought that up, if people don't know what a Norwal is, do you want to give a brief description of first the animal, the Norwal?
Yeah,
I'll find a picture
so
real quick.
the narwhal, I think, is like the unicorn of the sea.
Great
He's
way.
like a seal with one task. How do you
Yeah.
call it?
So
Yeah.
my wife still doesn't believe this is an actual animal, and I talk about NX and Norwal all the time, but this is kind of an image of it, and you'll see as described, the tusk that comes out looks kind of like a unicorn.
Yeah,
Um, creature. And so I think it's Jeff and there's some others that started Norwal in the beginning, right?
Jeff and Victor, they were both in the Angular team,
Yeah.
and they left Google and the Angular team, and they started Narwhal and NX.
And probably, yeah, what they're most famous for then is NX, and we're gonna jump all into NX, and that's where you work now, so it's a perfect fit.
Um,
We're gonna take a quick pause and do an ad break, and then we'll dive into NX.
Cloudinary allows you to remove any unwanted backgrounds, so you can reuse assets efficiently. You can also erase objects and people from images for placement in new experiences. For more engaging content, easily turn static images into dynamic animations and rely on smart cropping to always deliver assets with a focus on the most relevant objects to your brand. Cloudinary Programmable Media. Build faster with AI-powered image and video APIs.
Huge thanks over to Cloudinary. Really appreciate you guys for sponsoring us. Love working with Colby and the folks over there. And I've been a Cloudinary first MDE and now ambassador for many years. So I'm super stoked to have that sponsorship in here now. Okay, Katerina, tell me, like, NX has gone through a lot of iterations recently, exciting ones. They've added new frameworks over the years. I think when I first initially got into NX, it was mostly Angular. What is happening now? Where do you want to get started with it? Actually,
yeah.
let me prompt you with this. What is NX, first of all?
So I'll give you the elevator pitch, and then yeah. So NX is a powerful open source build system that enhances developer productivity, optimizes CI performance, and maintains code quality. So what does that mean?
I hope
So
you
it's,
have that written down. I couldn't
yeah,
memorize.
I do have that written down. Of course, I don't
Good.
want to, when I'm speaking about what an X is, I want like to use the official language.
Yes. Perfect.
When I speak about my code, I can say whatever I want. When I speak about an X, I have to use, nobody's asking me. I just want to feel good with myself afterwards.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So an X is a build system. That means that when you add an X to your project, it sort of takes care of orchestrating your builds. It helps you set up your tasks, what you run. Like you run a build task, you run a serve task, you run a test task, everything, all these run through an X. And the benefit of an X is that an X caches your artifact and has an intelligent code analysis algorithm. Yeah, maybe this is not the official language, but this is how I interpret it, that understands if your code has changed from one commit to the other, of course, and rebuilds and retests only things that have changed, and also caches these results. And whenever you rerun a build, for example, or rerun a test, it fetches these results from the cache. Also, what NX does, we also have now the workflows. That's if you have NX Cloud, or if you're using NX Cloud, all of these get synchronized with the NX Cloud, and you can share all these artifacts with other people from your team. And also NX distributes your tasks into multiple machines. For example, multiple agents is what we call them. So for example, if you have a Mono-Repo that has 10 different projects, NX intelligently allocates the build of all these projects into different machines.
Wow.
So it does make your CI much faster and everything more efficient. But what's more is that with NX we have code generators. We have plugins, what we call plugins, which are integrations with popular frameworks. As we said, NX started off as an extension of the Angular CLI, but we have now plugins for like most of the major frameworks, like we have for React, for Vue, for Nuxt, then we have for Vite, for Webpack. So that means that you can run all these tools through NX, and we have code generators that set up projects for you for these tools. Like instead of running Create React App, which doesn't exist anymore, you can set up a project using like NX generate a React application, or NX generate an Angular application, NX generate a Nuxt application, or whatever else you may need. So this ensures that you have like a strict, not a strict, like an opinionated architecture, and ensures like a uniform code quality across your code base, right? So, and that helps very much with code maintenance, I'm sure, and code shareability. I don't know if that's a word, but
Yeah,
code
that's
sharing, I guess.
When we talk about like the CI build, like that makes sense to me. There's GitHub Actions and things like that where they run. But when you're doing things locally, what are some more of the caching aspects that you start to get into with NX?
So as I said, so say you have a monorepo and you have 10 different projects in that monorepo, and project A is dependent on project B, and project B is dependent on project C. If you were not using an X, every time you made a change, you would have to build project A, project B, project C. But
Gotcha.
if you change just project B, NX will understand that project C is unchanged, so it will fetch the results from your local cache, and it will just rebuild the other two. So this is how it ideally works.
Nice. That makes sense. That's really cool. And I'm kind of curious. There's some new features. Are you ready to talk about those?
Yeah, so first let me give some background in order for these new features to make some sense.
Sure.
So as I said, NX started as an extension of the Angular CLI. So the first thing that NX had, how in Angular you have an Angular JSON, and in that Angular JSON you have all the configurations for your project, right? You have your architect and you have your targets. You configure your build, you configure your serve. NX used to have that. It used to have that called workspace JSON, and it would be like a very big workspace JSON file that would have the configuration for all your projects in your workspace. And for each project, you would add the settings for your build target, for your serve target, and everything. Then we broke up workspace JSON into individual project JSON files that would reside in each project's directory, right? And in that project JSON file, again, you would have what we call the targets, or rather what Angular used to call the targets within the architect property of that Angular JSON. These targets, like, again, build, serve, test, that would inside have all the configurations for these targets, let's call them.
Sure.
So on NX, when they started, because I wasn't there when they started adding more things, but yeah, let's say when we started adding more frameworks like React, what we would do is that since we are relying on workspace JSON or project JSON, or however you want to call it, since we're relying on that and we are relying on targets, it means that we are relying on what we call executors. And executor is like a builder that you call. For example, if you call the Angular builder, this is like the executor. So we had to build these executors in order to build React, and in order to be able to call the, I don't know, if you build React with Webpack, in order to be able to call Webpack through NX, we would have to write an executor that is a wrapper around Webpack, that we would call this wrapper through NX, and this wrapper would call Webpack, right?
Okay. Yep.
So we would call Webpack programmatically. The same thing happened for Vite. Like last year when we added the Vite plugin in NX, we wrote a wrapper that would call Vite programmatically. It would import the build function from Vite, and it would just call build through NX. So this. So everybody who has used NX is familiar with this, and even people who have not used it, the way I explained it maybe helped them understand what this is. However, this caused some overhead, as you may imagine, because if you have to maintain all these wrappers, it gives you flexibility, of course, and it gives you the ability to control what you want to pass, what options you want to pass. And sorry, give me a moment. Let's edit this out.
I'll pause.
For example, the build function of a tool gives you flexibility in because you fine-grainedly control what users pass into this. If users pass some things, you can do some post-processing on the things that the users pass and pass them the way NX would want them to, etc. So it's nice, but it creates some overhead in terms of maintainability, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Because whenever an API changes, you have to sort of adjust your builder. And there was an effort in the past year to try to make these builders as light as possible, like do as less overhead as possible. Eventually, during NX Conf that happened in New York in September this year, an idea was in the works. I was not part of this idea. I learned about it later, but an idea was in the works among some people from the company that what if we don't have any executors at all? What if we throw away Project JSON or Angular JSON or whatever you want, and we invoke the CLIs of all these tools directly? And
Okay.
we thought that's an amazing idea because the users will get the exact same results as they would get from running the CLI on their own. So instead of running, so they would get the same result if they run NX build and Vita build, for example. So that's amazing. That's what users want.
Yeah.
It removes the maintainability costs for us, but it also gets us close to the native experience as possible. So this effort started, and it's going very well. And edit point here, I guess, or maybe not. Since this podcast is going to be released after the launch week, so now let's say it's mid-February or even the end of February, we will have already launched it. We don't have, as we're speaking now, we don't have a name yet, but there will be a name.
Okay.
We decided it's not going to be next generation, and it's not going to be V3. It's going to be something else. It's going to be a mystery name. But yeah, it's going to be a whole new era for NX.
Nice.
So no executors, and I hope less GitHub issues saying this doesn't work as expected.
That's always a huge goal, right? For anything you do.
Yeah, and if there is a GitHub issue saying this doesn't work as expected, I'm going to say, not our problem. I'm not going to say that. I will provide.
Have to say, just upgrade.
I will say I will give them a very nice solution, but I will say we're just calling the native CLI. So yeah, I'm making a joke, of course, but yes, eventually what we will be doing with the new generation of NX, or however we decide to call it, NX is going to intelligently understand. No, it's going to understand. It's going to read your files, and it's going to look for tool configuration files. For example, if you're using Vite, you have a vite.config.ts file. Or if you're using Cypress, you have a Cypress config file. Or if you use Storybook, you have a .storybook directory. It's going to find all these config files. And for all these config files, it's going to set up targets for you in the background without you actually seeing like configuration files. This is why we're saying that we're going negative config now instead of zero config that we had in the past. And it's going to create these targets by just directly calling the Vite CLI, for example, or the Storybook CLI. And this is going to have two effects on the existing and the new workspaces. The effects are going to be that there's going to be much, much less configuration, like all the project JSON files that people used to have along with the Vita config file, for example, the Cypress config, are going to go away. Everything you want to configure is going to be going into the native configuration file of the tool you're using. And this is in my opinion, is very good because you have like a single point where a single source of truth, right? You
Yeah,
have the vit config file, and this is your source of truth, and you know that everything that's happening is in there. So you don't have to like think, I have the port set in vit config, but what port do I have in project JSON? So
sure.
it's one place for everything. And I think that's very nice. And I think that it strips down the extra overhead that an X has and just leaves the bare minimum, which the bare minimum of an X, in my opinion, and the most essential thing of an X is all its offerings with the cache, the affected, the distributed task execution, everything that makes your code run fast, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it strips down all the things that may have thought, that may have made people thought that it's like it's difficult to adopt, right? So because right now, if you have like an existing workspace, if you have a React application that you created with Create React App, or with I don't know, the Vite CLI, you did Create Vite React App, or I don't know, I remember how it's called. You will just do NX init, and then NX init will create an nx.json for you, connect it to NX Cloud if you want, and run your commands through NX, and you, without like changing to parse, like adding an nx.json, adding a .nx folder, and installing a couple of packages in your package.json, you will have all the benefits of an X like from the start. You will have your cache, you will have your everything, and you will not need anything else, like any boilerplate, any extra configurations, nothing. So I think that increases the adaptability of an X like
Yeah.
a lot.
And so what were what in the past, those wrappers, like how is it possible that you're not using the wrappers now? Like what information was being stored there that doesn't exist anymore, and where does that go?
So let me talk about the Vite
Okay.
wrapper, the Vite
Yeah.
executor, because
That's a great example since
yeah,
everyone's using Vite now.
since everyone using Vite, and since it myself and Jack mostly build it, so I have the most experience with it,
Perfect.
because I have hands-on experience with it. So what we would do is we would have like, we would import the build function, and we would adjust some outputs, some inputs in there from Vite, and we would set up watch. We would manually set some things that don't need to be added manually if you're using the Vite CLI, right? So we would wrap this in a function, like in an iterable, I think, and we would return that, and then X would call that iterable, that would call build, and would give back results, for example, if you were using watch, or it would set up the outputs, everything. Now we just remove this, and when you're calling an X has a function that's that we call run command, which will run an exec sync, or I don't know what, of Vite build, of running the Vite CLI. And in the beginning, we first started this, it seemed like, how is this possible? Because we have all these executors that do so many things. But once we started stripping them down, we saw that it wasn't such a big deal after all. And I know this because in Vite, we were doing a lot of things in the executor, in the wrapper or the
Sure.
executor. We were doing a lot of things. For some reason, I had added a lot of overhead. I had added a lot of assumptions. So the first thing I did before having the ability to remove it, I started stripping it down, adding all the things that were set, that were either hard coded or set in the executor, putting them in Vite config of users, so that eventually we arrived at a place where the Vite executor was stripped down to just calling build, and then it was easy to just remove it. It was like a step-by-step process.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
really cool. It's like simplifying everything while still giving you exactly what you need and probably what you wanted from the get-go. So it's kind
Yeah.
of it's overall keeping things as simple as possible, which is really cool.
Yeah, because
Um,
people don't come to an X for the executors. People come to an
right.
X for the cache and the fast links and the generators,
Yeah,
right? Because it's
exactly.
the two things you need: the generators and for your CI to be fast. So There
Yeah,
you
and
go.
the generators are really cool, especially like when you look at the VS Code like plugins and things like that. It's really neat how fast you can move along with that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
I wanted to bring up, just for those who haven't seen this before. So we were just kind of talking about the plugin side of this. So this is kind of what a plugin looks like in the IDE. Something else that I wanted to show that's right by this though is the graph. Can you just talk a minute about kind of how the actual NX project graph works and those dependencies and the flow works in that?
No, I can't. No, the reason I can't is because it's I'm not sure I'm going to explain it very well.
Okay.
But wait, I have a trick up my sleeve. If you go to the NX website
Okay.
and you click the AI chat tab,
Ooh,
you can ask,
is
can you
it in
explain?
docs?
It's yeah, go to getting started or something.
Okay.
Yep, and go to AI
Okay.
chat. Can
Nice.
you explain how graph works? I've never worked on the graph, right? And the graph
Sure.
in my mind is the most complicated thing on NX, right?
Oh,
No! For me,
boo.
it works on my machine, by the way.
It's probably, hang on, let me try it with shields down. Uh,
Yeah. So it's the most complicated and smart part of NX, to be honest. I haven't worked on the graph ever. So
yeah,
I
so the
wouldn't dare try to explain it on a podcast.
the cool part, and I'm by
I know
no
what it
means an
is,
expert.
but I don't
That's
know how it's set up.
that's exactly what I was gonna say. I don't know why this doesn't work for me, but
It's okay.
I think you explained it pretty well, just in the determination of like when you're creating packages and things, it knows that these three things need to be tested and run because there was a change downstream that could affect that, right? Whereas
Mhm.
these other 4 or 6 or 10 things that you are working on that don't have anything to do with that, the graph shows you exactly like here's why they're connected and how they're connected. So it's always been a really cool feature that I've seen in NX, and I think Turbo does something similar to this, but I don't think it's as graphical as NX has. So,
I
um,
haven't used Turbo, but
have you
yeah,
ever have you used Lerna before NX by chance?
I haven't.
Okay,
I
I think
haven't.
so. Lerna used to be my go-to Mono-Repo, but it changed over time. And then I believe the Norwal team or the NX team,
Yeah.
however you want to look at it, you guys have taken over kind of maintaining that. But I
Mhm.
feel like at the same time, it's probably lost a little bit of what it used to be because there's so many new tools that are out there that are doing like some advanced stuff like this that it's not as popular as it used to be.
I guess I haven't used it.
What other additional changes are there? I know, like you've been working on the Vite side of things, and it seems like everything is is going to be run by Vite in the future. Is there anything like I use like PnP workspaces a lot? Is there integrations to that as well? Like what
I
in the mono repo world do you know of that's coming up?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think we do have integrations with PNBM or Yarn workspace or whatever, or we definitely provide guides on how to use an X on these or how to migrate
Okay,
from this to an X.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, what else? So I know that, for example, in the terms of, I know that now tools, I've seen that tools have started taking into account monorepos more, right? I
Yeah,
know it started with Storybook, with taking into account that someone may be on a monorepo, so they, whenever you run a command with a Storybook CLI, they allow you to pass like the config directory that you should use, right? And when we were working on building the Storybook 7 migration on an X4 Storybook, we worked a lot with the Storybook team to sort of close some gaps in terms of supporting monorepos, right?
nice, cool.
Yeah, and Storybook was very cool to do that. I know now that Vitesse, they also have a new support for monorepos, which I haven't fixed on the NX side yet. And I should. It's on my list of to do for this or next week. But yeah, now apparently if you're using Vitesse on a Mono-Repo, you can add some configuration files and just make it work in a Mono-Repo. So I think it's very nice that all these tools natively try to do things to support Mono-Repos.
Yeah, it's exciting that that's finally kind of coming to fruition. It was tough, using some of these automated CI tools in the past, and it's really come around. It's awesome. I think it's gonna be one of the biggest, maybe not changes, but additions in 2024, since they've been around a long time now. People are supporting them. I hope that like tools like NX that aren't run by like the Vercels or bought up by them, like they continue to be supported equally too. Am I missing anything else about NX? Not that I can think of. Katerina, where are you speaking at next? Where can people find you next?
So my next, but previous as of the airing of this podcast, is NG India. So I'm going to be speaking in India about NX, about Angular and NX. I've never been to India before, and yeah, I'm going to Delhi, and I'm pretty excited. My best friend is coming with me, so I guess we're going to have some fun there too.
That's really exciting.
And then I'm going to NGConf in March, which
Nice.
I'm looking forward
I'm hoping to make it out there. Maybe I can say hello to you.
Yeah.
We'll see. I love going to NGConf. All right, let's jump into our Purrfect Picks. I will let you go first if you're up for it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a great fan of the three-body problem. If you're not familiar, the three-body problem or the Remembrance of Earth's Past is a trilogy by Liu Cixin, like a Chinese writer. And I think it's the greatest work of fiction that's been written ever.
Wow.
This is what I believe. Yes. And I've read the whole series twice.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm going to read it a third time definitely. And they are making a series out of it. I'm very excited to see it because I'm very excited to see how all these people that I've imagined they're going to look like. I'm also a bit terrified because sometimes you never, when you're a reader, you're never fully satisfied with what you see.
Yeah, the image in your head that you've built.
Yeah, but still I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it. So
that's really cool.
So and I think it's coming March 21st. Yeah, sorry.
How many books are in the series?
3.
Okay, there's 3. Gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. I've never heard of this. I'll have to dive into it a little more.
The fun fact, a lot of people who work at NX are fans of the three-body problem.
Ah, very cool.
Victor being one of them. Max, I know, is also a fan, and more people from the company. So yeah, it's
that's cool.
It's very nice. Yeah.
My pick, and kind of the same vein, is a TV show I watched. So I really messed this up. I think it was when I had COVID, like first time or second time. This is terrible. It's my 5th time having COVID, which has been fantastic, by the way. So I was watching this and it skipped. Like something on Hulu happened where I went from like season 1, episode 5 to season 2 to episode 2 or something. And I didn't know it. And my friends like asked me about like, well, what about X, Y, and Z? I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't remember that at all. And so
no.
I realized like it actually skipped on me, and my wife hadn't seen it yet. And so we actually, while we were both sick again with COVID, we watched over the course of 4 days both seasons. So it was super fun to kind of go back and see it from the beginning. If you haven't seen the show yet, try to make it through like the first few episodes. They're pretty hard to watch. Like it's just it's like gritty, like it's in your face. But like once you get into it, it really opens up. In season 2, there's some of the best writing and cinematography that I've seen. It really blows my mind. So I think it's won a couple of awards now, Grammys, whatever. things that are coming out now, it seems to be winning. So I think people are appreciating it more.
Yeah, I was gonna say we watched the first 2 episodes, but they were very intense, so
They're
we
very
stopped.
intense. You gotta like I would say probably by the 4th episode it starts.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a like subtle show. It's in your face for sure. So,
Okay, maybe
and I
we'll
don't mean
watch
in a
the
scary
rest.
way. People that know me know the show. I don't watch scary movies. So, it's just more of like family drama type stuff and like yelling and things like that. That kind of in your face. So. I was gonna ask you a random question I had on my list. I found it. How is Jeff's pig doing?
I was so happy that I got to actually pet the pigs last year. We
Nice.
went, yeah, when we went. So last year, the company get together was in Arizona, and we actually went and visited Jeff's farm, and we
That's
actually got to
awesome.
pet the pigs. Yeah,
That's
I
so
can
cool.
show you a picture if you want, if I find it fast.
I do want to see it. So this is always, if you float around NX or if you've known Norwell or Jeff over the course of the years, they have this farm and the pigs are like amazingly intelligent. So I've always been told like don't have a pig as a pet in your house because they'll get into everything. They're very creative at opening things.
Yeah, okay, found the picture. Let me
Woohoo.
share. Mhm. Present, share screen. uh, Window. Okay, here it is, the pig.
Aw, that's so awesome.
Yeah. It was huge. I don't know if I have that.
They are
Yeah.
quite big.
Look!
What's the name? I forget. Isn't it something funny?
Cheddar.
Cheddar. That's right. I always
Yeah.
want to say bacon. I'm like, that's too obscene. I don't think it's bacon.
Yeah.
Well, Katerina, thank you so much for showing us all the new features on NX, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
All right. Enjoy. Ciao.
Bye.